The year is around 2700 BCE. The sands of Egypt are quiet, but beneath their silence, something is stirring. A new dynasty has risen, and a single idea will take hold, that a man could become immortal, not by his presence, but by his deeds, not by breath or blood, but by what he leaves behind. This is the Old Kingdom, the age of absolute kingship, the age of architects, the age of the pyramids. And its first ruler, King Djoser, was determined to leave no doubt about Egypt's rising power. To fuel his vision of a mighty state, Egypt turned east, to the harsh mountains of the Sinai Peninsula. There, in the scorched desert valleys, lay rich deposits of copper and turquoise, vital resources for tools, ornaments, and power. But the land was not unclaimed. Local nomadic tribes, fierce and unyielding, stood in the way. When Egyptian emissaries sent to extract these resources were threatened or attacked, Djoser responded with force. He launched a punitive expedition, marching soldiers deep into the Sinai. It was a message that Egypt had entered a new age, and those who stood in its way would feel the might of a kingdom forged in stone and blood. As Djoser's reign brought new heights to royal power, Egypt's political landscape began to shift. What had once been a patchwork of semi-independent regions, each ruled by its own local chief, was now being drawn into the orbit of a single crown. These ancient districts, later known as nomes, were no longer governed by their own will. They were brought under direct royal control. Former rulers, once masters of their local lands, were reduced to officials of the state. Now they served as governors, tax collectors, or administrators, their authority flowing not from their lineage, but from the king. It was a quiet revolution, one not fought with swords, but with scrolls, seals, and royal decree. Egypt was becoming a nation. Djoser was no ordinary king, and his tomb would be no ordinary grave. In a bold departure from tradition, Djoser commissioned the construction of something the world had never seen: a pyramid. Not a modest mud brick mastaba like those of his ancestors, but a towering monument of solid stone. Layered in 6 massive steps and rising over 60 meters into the sky, it was the tallest structure ever built at the time. Wrapped in gleaming white limestone, an unmistakable symbol of royal ambition and innovation, this architectural marvel, designed by his brilliant vizier and architect Imhotep, was a declaration of Egypt's ambition. After the towering success of Djoser, the rulers who followed tried to leave their mark, but time has swallowed most of their legacy. Their monuments lay unfinished or lost, their names fading into silence. But Egypt was far from done. With the rise of the 4th dynasty, a new brilliance dawned. At its head stood a visionary, King Sneferu, ambitious, inventive, and relentless in his pursuit of perfection. Where others had failed or faltered, Sneferu transformed pyramid building into a science. With the construction of Egypt's first true pyramid, a monument with smooth, angled sides rising cleanly toward the sky, known today as the Red Pyramid, a declaration that Egypt had mastered stone. Sneferu was a ruler with a vision that reached beyond Egypt's borders. Under his reign, Egypt opened new trade routes to the north, forging connections with the rich timberlands of the Levant. From distant cities like Byblos, cedar wood flowed into Egypt, fueling construction, shipbuilding, and royal ambition. But while trade flourished in the north, the southern border was on fire. Sneferu launched a military campaign into Nubia, crushing resistance and capturing prisoners and livestock in vast numbers. It was a brutal display of power, designed not just to conquer, but to secure Egypt's dominance. Through commerce and conquest, Sneferu reshaped Egypt's role in the world. Egypt had entered an age where legacy would be measured in stone and remembered for eternity. The legacy of Sneferu did not end with him. It passed to his son, Khufu, a ruler whose ambition would reach heights no man had ever dared. He inherited the quarries and expanded them into empires of stone. Under his command, a monument unlike any other began to rise from the desert floor. The Great Pyramid of Giza. Towering once at nearly 147 meters, it held the title of the tallest structure on Earth for over 3,800 years. A mountain made by man, wrapped in white limestone, it once shimmered like a beacon beneath the blazing Egyptian sun, visible for miles across the horizon. It was built from an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks, each placed with astonishing precision. Though the Great Pyramid soared into the sky, his name sank in the hearts of his people. Later generations would speak of him not as a noble builder, but as a harsh and distant king who demanded greatness at a terrible cost. According to ancient legends, he closed the temples and pressed thousands into labor. Herodotus claimed 100,000 men toiled for 20 years, their backs bent beneath the weight of ambition. But the truth may lie somewhere deeper, beneath stone, not scrolls. Modern discoveries hint at a more organized force, skilled workers, fed and housed, working in honor of their king. Whatever the truth, Khufu's legacy is a paradox. He built a wonder of the world, and yet walked the edge of infamy. When Khufu's reign came to an end, his son Djedefre rose to claim the throne. Determined to leave a mark as grand as his father's, he chose a new path, far from Giza, at a place called Abu Rawash. There, he began work on his own pyramid. But fate, it seems, had other plans. Djedefre's reign was brief, and his monument never reached the sky. After him came Khafre, another son of Khufu, a king molded by legacy, determined to continue the grand vision of stone and sky. And so the work began again. At Giza, just beside his father's Colossus, Khafre raised a pyramid that soared 136 meters high, only a few short of the Great Pyramid. But its foundation rested on higher ground, giving it the illusion of dominance, a silent rivalry in stone. The stories speak of closed temples and a people once more pressed into toil. But whether driven by fear, devotion, or duty, the result was undeniable. A second pyramid joined the skyline, not merely as a tomb, but as a statement. A testament that the age of pyramid builders was far from over. As the great shadow of Khafre passed, his son Menkaure rose to the throne, not as a builder of giants, but as a ruler remembered for his grace. Where his forefathers ruled with iron will, Menkaure ruled with an open hand. It is said he reopened the temples, mended what was broken, and brought a softer light to a land long defined by the weight of stone. Yet even he would leave his mark in the desert. He commissioned a pyramid, smaller in scale, but no less ambitious in its elegance. Standing at 65 meters, it was wrapped in polished granite at its base, its smooth face intended to shimmer in the midday sun. After Menkaure, the throne passed to Shepseskaf, the last king of the legendary Fourth Dynasty. But unlike his forefathers, he chose not to build a pyramid, rejecting the tradition that was set by his forefathers. Some say it was a matter of resources. Others believe it was a message. By abandoning the pyramid, the sacred shape of the cult of Ra, Shepseskaf may have been challenging the growing power of the priesthood, whose influence had begun to eclipse even that of the kings. But with his death, so too ended a dynasty, and from its ashes rose a new line of rulers, the fifth dynasty, whose crowns were crowned not just by royal lineage, but by the will of the priesthood of Ra. It was a shift that would reshape the throne itself. From now on, kings ruled not alone, but under the ever-watchful gaze of Ra's priests. And so, the Golden Age came to an end. The Old Kingdom, an era of soaring pyramids, sacred symmetry, and unmatched artistic brilliance, began to dim. What had once been a kingdom of visionaries became a land burdened by its own greatness. Power slipped from the hands of kings to the provinces. The great voice of unity softened to a murmur of scattered lords and restless lands. It was the end of an age, a time of stagnation, of uncertainty, of slow decline was dawning. Yet Egypt would endure, for though the crown had dimmed, the soul of the Nile still flowed. The pyramids still stood. The kings still wore the crown, but the Egypt they ruled was beginning to change. Power no longer flowed from a single throne. It now pulsed through temples, provinces, and priesthoods. And yet, even as the cracks began to form, Egypt remained without equal. Egypt was the first true empire of the ancient world. But even greatness can tremble. Next time, we journey into the 5th and 6th dynasties, where kings share power with priests, and Egypt begins its long descent toward division.